Alright, we're ready to start assembly, and just a couple of notes first. Unless otherwise noted, the lubricant that goes on O-rings is just enough to make it shiny. This is not a time when the bigger the glob, the better the job. It just doesn't work that way. Same way with threads. I put just a tiny bit of lubricant on all threaded parts, just enough to make it look wet, cut down the friction, and go from there. There's just absolutely no reason, unless otherwise noted, that you need to use an excessive amount of lubricant. So let's do the hard part first and get it out of the way. It takes a little explanation. I know folks really don't like to buy tools for a single-use job, so I guess you can struggle through it without it, but inserting the piston shaft O-ring in a Mark 5 or a Mark 10 is challenging, and you get one shot at it, and you might as well do it right. And so a couple of things that'll help you and just make the go a whole lot smoother. Herman makes a really nice, inexpensive set of assembly tools for the Mark 5, and also Mark 10. It's a little different because the body length is a little different. It consists of this is the backing part, which goes in the high pressure side and keeps you from being able to push the O-ring too far down. The second part is a guide that helps guide the O-ring down into the gland, and then the brass rod is the pushing tool, and it's got a cut on the side which Herman made, which is kind of cool because once it's in there you can just slowly turn that. It runs the ridge and moves the O-ring in. So let's take a look at it. This part stays in the high pressure side like so. We'll see if I can do it the first time without ruining it. Like so. Then you get your piston shaft O-ring. That's a new O-ring for me. I had this made by a specialty company in Wisconsin. It's the same size, same durometer, but I bought plenty of them, and it cost a fortune to have them done in red, but it makes it easier with the kit. It makes it more discernible, easy to spot, because unless you feel O-rings every day, it's hard to tell the difference between a 90 durometer and a normal 70 Shore A. So with that said, this O-ring has some lubricant on it, and just really enough to make it shiny. Makes it a little challenging to get in there with your fingers, but basically you just get it started like so, and then you use the brass insertion tool and push down. As you push down, you'll feel it start to move into the groove. When you feel it engage, give it a little twist. Well, I wasn't 100% successful that time, which is okay, which is no big deal. To use the brass tool or a plastic tool, never use anything metal, and just simply work it around the edge. Sometimes finger works good too. And because you have the backing piece in here, the O-ring can't slide any further down. Really frustrating if you don't. Give that a twist, and there you go. You can see the O-ring is perfectly in its gland now. Alright, about 1,000 so far. Set those tools aside. Next, let's talk about the piston. Piston, lubricate piston base with the O-ring on the piston base. Just some shiny. We're good there. Now, one of my pet peeves about assembling the piston with the body is yahoos that'll tell you they can push this knife edge piston past that captive O-ring in the gland without using a piston bullet, and can guarantee 100% that they haven't damaged that O-ring in any way. Well, if they can do that and guarantee it to you, then they can probably walk on water. Well, at least they probably think they can, but they're full of shit. There's no way that you can glob this thing up with grease, waller it around, and get it past there and guarantee that it hasn't damaged that O-ring. And damaging that O-ring negates doing the rest of the work. Unless you've successfully pushed that past, it's not going to work. It's just, all efforts are futile. It'll never hold IP. It'll never be stable. Piston bullets, I apologize, all I've got on me right now is one of the really short nylon ones. Herman and I are working on making a nice brass one, which the factory one was brass. It was nice, and hopefully we can get it where it's inexpensive enough to where I can convince folks that they need to, you know, pay the nominal cost and get it, do it once, do it right. Before we go ahead and put the piston in, you want to take your, now let me back up. Let's go ahead and just put the piston in, it'll be easier. This first stage did not have any shims in it. And I like to have a couple of the really thin shims in it because it keeps the spring itself from digging into the regulator body and into the piston because there's some degree of rotation as the piston is compressed each time. So I'm going to throw them in there, and you know, I may be wrong, and when we do the setup on it, we may have to go back and take them out. But I put a very tiny thin bit of silicone on here, and the only reason I do that is it helps it when I tamp it down into place. It just helps it to stick in there and doesn't drop out. So I do it there. I take the other one and a little bit of lubricant there. It goes around the base of the piston. Now with the piston, where it's going to run on that dynamic O-ring, you're going to put a little extra grease. Even if you look in the Scubapro literature, they tell you that when you start getting that harmonic distortion, the whistling, the honking, it has to do with the oscillation across this O-ring, you know, other gobbledygook that they're guessing at. But you need to put a sufficient amount of lubricant on this piston shaft. Now, I'm not saying pack it like a wheel bearing, but put some grease on it where you know it's on it. Most of it's going to get wiped off in the first pass, but that's okay. There you go. Give you a little idea of what I got on there. Alright. Next, take that piston bullet, put a little lubricant around the point, because this is the part that's going to engage and push right through that O-ring. Set it like so. Take your spring, and you don't lubricate the spring. Don't put grease on it. You know, if you're using the spec boot, of course that's going to be different, but for overall use, clean up your spring, put it on. Lubricating the spring's like putting water on water. So what you're going to do is it's just going to be like one movement. So flip the body up like so, get that piston bullet aligned, and just push it through. There we go. That one jumped out because the brass one wouldn't have, but you can see the piston's gone all the way through. Got our knife edge there. We're set up good here on the base. Everything looks good. Moves. Fantastic. Probably your biggest hurdle is right there. If you get that part right, you're really ahead of the game. Next, we're going to go ahead and put the turret on, swivel turret. And I've already talked about ensuring that you have a stainless turret nut. Take your turret, friction washer, and you put a little lubricant on it both sides because it just helps it stay in place. There we go. We got our turret with our new O-ring, and that's a dynamic O-ring, so we put a little more than usual on it. But once again, it's not a wheel bearing. It's not a pack blend. Take your turret nut. Push it through. Drop this in. And then you see how I pushed it back out like so. Just let it thread in there. Hold it with your thumb. Once it's pulled up tight, swiveling good, then you need your threaded rod, 3/8. Then you need a torque wrench in inch pounds. One in foot pounds, you're going to fail. You want to torque this to 50 inch pounds is plenty. So now let me back up. If I were doing this, normally I would have this clamped in a vise so it's steady. I'm doing it here just for demonstration purposes only. So Okay. And we are good there. Next, we're going to go ahead and put the cap on. So around in here, in this area in here, which of course I'm sure you've already had completely cleaned and polished, is where the piston O-ring rides. So you're going to want to put a little lubricant in there. Not, once again, not excessive. Probably the easiest thing to do is just take a new swab, roll it around, and then just run it around in that area there. Spread it all out evenly. And then as you're backing out there, you can give just a touch here. Alright. Take your the piston cap and the main body, and you'll feel it start to engage the O-ring and then just click together. And we're just going to do this hand tight. We'll torque it later. Specs on that say, crank it down, where it can't be loosened by hand. So it's hard to put a torque wrench on the spanner, pin spanner. So you're probably pretty good to go like that as it is. Next thing, let's go ahead and put together our high pressure seat, our high pressure cap. Got our O-ring on there, got a little grease on here. Don't grease around the piston. The camera's not going to focus on this in the white too well, but curve side, the cup side goes down. Cup side goes towards the piston, flat side goes towards the cap. All you gotta do is put it on there and push it in with your finger, push it all the way flush, and it looks like so. Alright. Flip upside down. I guess I should have mentioned this. I do also have the high pressure cap O-ring, or the seals towards the high pressure seat. I've got these done in red as well, so they're easy to ID. Put it inside your cap. Just gently tap it down all the way around with your O-ring tool, like so. I don't have that one quite there. There we go. Then as straight as possible. Now you don't have to worry about engaging the piston because the spring is holding it back. You're not anywhere near touching this when you're doing it this way. So turn that in and then just turn it with your palm as far as you can. Take your cap tool, and this really does not need to be wrenched in there. With the tool that Herman made, it's really easy. Just turn it down, and once it's finger tight, it's good. You don't need to, brute force is not needed. Alright. Our last part. Already got our O-ring on here. Lubricate it just a little as well as the threads. Good there. Take your high pressure filter. Back up. I shouldn't have done that. This one didn't have a backup O-ring in it, or an O-ring in it, which is odd. Put your O-ring in there. Put your filter in there. Then take your star washer with the curves. So the curves are facing up a little. Put that in there and push it down with your thumb. Alright. Take your plastic tool. Push that down all the way around. Cool. Alright. Take your saddle. Have to work it around the O-ring a little bit. Oop. See there, I missed a crucial part. Kind of important to have the yoke on there. Alright, there we go. Put the yoke on and work the saddle back on there. Probably would have been smart to put that O-ring on there after it. I was just trying to prep things, so probably easier to put through the yoke saddle on, then put your O-ring on. And then start alright, now the the specs on tightening the nut down is, I think, if I remember right, about 30 foot-pounds, which is like over 300 inch-pounds. So about 30 foot-pounds. You know, there's no need to get overly aggressive with this. You know, when you do torque it down, be sure that you have it in your bench vise. If you have a torque wrench that allows you to do foot-pounds and will still reach here, great. If not, I just snug it down. Get your yoke screw back there. Now what you're going to want to go ahead and do is get all the new O-rings on your port plugs, and you're going to want to plug all the port plugs except two of them. You're going to need one for for a low pressure hose going to a second stage, and you'll need another one going to your IP gauge. So that shows you the assembly of the Mark V, and now we're ready to move on to the setup stage, and we'll move on to setup next.